I'm rolling tape. Rob, you rolling?
Rolling.
What's your time code read?
10105.
Okay, good. Tape's rolling. Speed.
And action.
Must be a boy. There must be a boy. There must be a boy.
There must be a boy. There must.
A friend of mine in the record business, Jackie, she rang me up and she said, "How would you like to interview Doris Day?" And I went, "Yeah. Everybody in the world wants to interview Doris Day." No, she said, "It's real." Because her son, Terry, has found a lost record and she's happy to talk about it. But she said, the real difficulty is you've got to go tomorrow to LA. And I thought, right, I've never been one to miss a challenge, and particularly when it was Doris Day. And so I got on the plane, a long flight. I read everything about Doris that I possibly could. And actually, when I got to Pebble Beach, I sort of felt that even though I hadn't had weeks to prepare, which I normally would have, or I could read a lot more books or magazines, or some lovely researcher would give me wadges of research, but I kind of felt as if I knew the woman, and because I loved her so much as a performer, when I got there, I was really up for it, except we went to the bar, because we had a crew with us, of course, and we went to the bar for a late night drink, and her son Terry came along, and the first thing he said to me was, after hello, "How was your flight?" He said, "I have to warn you that if my mum's makeup artist doesn't turn up from Hollywood tomorrow morning, she won't do the interview." And I'm thinking, I have come all this way. I have read everything that I could possibly get. And if she doesn't turn up so that I can talk to her and look at her in person, I would be so disappointed. So here we are based at Doris's little hotel. It was called the Cypress Inn. And very much like an inn, very comfortable, very warm. And God bless the makeup artist, she turned up on time, and so did Doris. And when she walked into the room, honestly, apart from being a little bit thicker in the middle, and aren't we all, she looked just the same. White polo neck sweater, the blonde hair the same, more or less. And she was so open, so friendly, so amenable, great sense of humour, that I felt as if I'd known her all my life. It just was so thrilling, in fact, to see her in reality and to realise that she was amenable and approachable and not in the slightest bit starry. Quite the opposite. It's not very often that it happens that practically all the interview transmitted. So there are only a few rushes, a few bits left over that weren't included. And I'm so happy not only that Doris's interview is out of the archive, but that a few of the rushes are as well.
It's hard to think, though, that before you made It's Magic that you were living in a trailer with your second husband.
Isn't that weird?
I mean, it's such a contrast. You know, one day you're in a trailer where the marriage is going wrong, and the next day you're making a hit movie.
All kinds of strange things happened to me. Did they happen to you like that? Did strange things happen to you, or did you have just a nice, easy...
Absolutely not.
Not?
No.
I don't think anybody has. You know, looking around the room here, we all have had it, haven't we, folks? Yeah. Everybody says yes.
You've got to remember that I was a journalist in Northern Ireland, so I lived through bombs, bullets and barricades, and I was always asking journalistic questions. So I never thought I should go into any interview and just be all smarmy and jammy, that I should ask the other side of the coin. And because it was clearly evident that she had had a fairly tough life, playing with some of the toughest bands, as it turned out, marrying some of those musicians who turned out to be very tough men, and being physically abused. And so it would have been remiss of me as an interviewer, I thought, maybe in my naivety, that I would miss out on those questions. So, no, I was determined that I would get the other side of the coin.
It was good that, you know, we parted. And
Nowadays, of course, they talk about wife battering, and it's acknowledged as not accepted, but people talk about it. But then you never did you?
No, I didn't tell anyone. Not even my mother. I didn't, until I was home. When I was home, I was safe.
I have to say, during the whole interview, I never felt that she was short of time, wanted this interview to be over, didn't like me asking her about her troubled marriages and being beaten as a wife, being abused, unhappy periods in her time. she never balked at any of that, which actually delighted me in a way, because I thought that it showed both sides of Doris Day. It wasn't always the nicey, beautifully dressed, handsome men, lovely love story. It wasn't all about that. At one point, I think she did say, well, we won't go any further there. We just sort of think of Rock Hudson, for example, just in happy terms. And she didn't want to talk about his demise and his death, although she, of course, spoke at his memorial. So that was the only time that she kind of backed off.
In the book that you did some years back, you said in that Marty really controlled all the finances, as we of course know, because you had to sue to get some of that money back. But would he not allow you to buy things, for example, for your house, or spend money as you wanted to buy, to spend it?
He didn't. That didn't bother him. No, but he was in control of the finances. Yes, he was.
So how disillusioned were you then when he died, that you realised all the money had gone? It's difficult to describe how you feel. First of all, I was terribly upset when he passed away. That was the most horrendous thing for me. And then finding out all the bad things was difficult. But I was so lucky because I went right into television. I didn't want to go into television, and I didn't know that I was going to go into television. Marty had hooked you into that.
Yes, he had set that whole thing up, and so there I was. But how lucky I was, because I was very well paid.
Can you imagine what a gift that was? And how humbled in a way I was by the fact that she hadn't done any interviews over decades because of being so sad at Marty's demise and everything that happened to her. But as you can see, she put a spin on it. She had had her horror stories before Marty, but I got the feeling that she genuinely loved Marty and was so affected by his death in 1968. So remember, we're talking about the 60s here. But I got the impression that although Marty was involved in financial affairs, but I think that the blame was going to financial advisors, not particularly to Marty. I don't think she held a grudge against her husband. She loved Marty very much indeed. And I just liked that. She always had, all during the interview, no matter how sad the story was, she always ended it with a smile and with that lovely humour that she exuded the whole way through the interview. So for me, it's just something I will take to my grave.
Miss Morrow, why are you so fascinated with my personal affairs?
I'm not fascinated, Mr. Allen. Revolted.
You don't see me going down to the phone company complaining about your affairs.
I have none to complain about.
It figures.
What do you mean it figures?
Well, obviously, you're a woman who lives alone, doesn't like it.
I happen to like living alone.
Look, I don't know what's bothering you, but don't take your bedroom problems out on me.
I have no bedroom problems. There's nothing in my bedroom that bothers me.
Oh, that's too bad.
In a way, Doris had all sorts of images, didn't she? Because she was the girl next door, the pretty girl, the innocent one. Nothing was too adventurous on screen. I say the kissing was pretty good, but beyond that, it didn't really go. It was all sort of supposition, really. But she had lots of tags like the perennial virgin or Miss Goody Two-Shoes, which she didn't, when I met her, she didn't really go along with that. I did ask her the question, which wasn't an easy question to ask. You know, how do you like being Miss Goody Two-Shoes? But she didn't really go along with that, and she just thought that that image had sort of built up, largely because of the movies she made and maybe the men that she was dealing with. All through the decades, we've heard about Doris Day's passion for dogs, for animals, and of course she raised a lot of money for them and so on. And I did want to ask her the question about how many dogs she had, but she didn't really want to be drawn on the number, and I do believe it was well above 20. I leave it at that.
Okay, you're running, are you?
Yeah, just for a test.
Yeah, just for test. I'd love to know how many dogs you have at the moment. What's the
I
final
can't
total?
tell you how many dogs I have. I don't tell anybody.
Oh, right, okay.
But she did tell me that she had a cook specially to make the dog food. I often think of that myself because I have a dog here and I would love that. And she has a kitchen for the food to be made in, and every dog was served on a red gingham placemat. And I went, why would that be? And she said, well, I eat off a gingham placemat. Why shouldn't my dogs? I don't know why she didn't want to talk about the sheer number. Maybe people would have been shocked at just how fixated she was about dogs and about animals in general. But she was very well known in her area for that. And the other thing that I've discovered is that, you know, around her area, she was always just in the shops, you know, doing the shopping, in the supermarket, doing ordinary things that the public, in a way, don't expect people to do. They don't think that star names go shopping for themselves. They think that they've got endless people who do the shopping for them. And I like that, the fact that she was approachable in her local area and did raise a lot of money for animals and did involve a lot of local people to do that. I like that a lot. I felt that she was very proud of her family ties, proud of her son Terry, loved her grandson, and of course insisted on him coming down to the beach with us afterwards. And I like that because I'm a family person myself, grew up in a very tight family in Northern Ireland, and so I kind of recognise the signals.
That's Pebble Beach over there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, right across.
It was hilarious in a way to end up in Pebble Beach with Doris because, let's be honest, I had to go overnight. I was dressed in high heels, black tights, a very short black skirt, a jacket. I was not dressed for the beach. And when the director said, why don't we go down on the beach and kick a bit of sand, I'm thinking, I've got totally the wrong things on. I did take off the high heels, but beyond that, I just thought how ridiculous it was. But it's one of my lasting memories. If you told me when I was young that one day I'd be in Pebble Beach and I'd kick sand with Doris Day and her grandson, I would have said, that is ridiculous. Let's face it, in broadcasting life, very lucky to meet people whom you've admired for a long time or people who are really interesting. But it's very rarely that you get a little bit of downtime that shows you the real person behind the, not the facade, because she didn't show a facade, I didn't think, but just the real person who just is happy being in Pebble Beach, happy owning her little hotel. You know, Clint Eastwood is up the road there as the mayor, etc., etc. And I just thought it showed a very human touch, and I like that a lot. I mean, I'm lucky. My career has been long. It's quite a number of decades, and I've been very fortunate to interview some really big names in my time. But I have to say that Doris will always stand out. Hear me calling her Doris. Doris Day will always stand out in my memory as being one of the highlights, really. Simply because I not only love her still to this day on the screen, but I liked her as a woman. I thought that she was just very human in her approach. I loved her sense of humour because what she's saying sometimes is not particularly funny, but she laughs when makes it sort of funny. So she has a delight in her voice, that smile in her voice, and she makes you feel good.
My Bichon, his name is Ozzy.
Ozzy. Why did you call him Ozzy?
Well, I don't know, he looks like an Ozzy. He just, you know, you have to have them for about a week and then you know.
And then you name them after that, do you?
Yeah, I do. I have funny names for them. His real name is Russell Oswald.
Russell.
Do you know my biggest regret from the interview? At one point she said to me, in fact towards the end of the interview, she said, have you ever been to Martha's Vineyard? And I went, never. She said, you must come and visit me in Martha's Vineyard. But being a well-brought-up little girl from Northern Ireland, you don't sort of ring somebody like that up and say, do you remember you said I could go to Martha's Vineyard with you? I never did it. I think some people find it really hard to understand how important movies were. Because in my small town in Northern Ireland, life revolved around how often I could go to the pictures. Because there was a Saturday morning picture, there was, you know, films being changed in 3 cinemas every week, which was a real treat. And it was your life in a way. It was a joy that came into your life. It was fantasy. I'm living in Northern Ireland, we had no fridge, no washing machine. I'm watching movies in Hollywood where you've got everything, and watching these glamorous stars who've got fabulous clothes, which I couldn't afford. I could afford 6 sequins around my collar and that was it. So it was fantasy at the same time, and it was feel good. And I hope when people watch this, they will get a new understanding, perhaps, or a different understanding about just how fabulous those films were, the way they were written, the storyline intertwined, the way it was presented. And, it just gives me everything. I mean, you know, I can't wait now for the next Doris Day movie to come in the box.